My name is Renee Castillo. I'm 31 years old, and last week, I stood in a concrete storage unit staring at my daughter's names painted on the wall. A detective stood beside me. The unit smelled like fresh paint and baby powder. There was a crib built for two, a rocking chair, a dresser full of newborn clothes with the tags still on, and a little lamp shaped like a lamb. Somebody had painted clouds across the back wall, and under the clouds, in careful looping letters, to names. My girls' names. Names I had never announced to anyone. On a folding table by the door sat a stack of my stolen mail, held together with a rubber band. The detective asked if I recognized the handwriting on the wall. I did. That was the moment my knees finally gave. But here's what none of them knew. The woman who built this room had been rehearsing to replace me for 9 months. And how does a nursery end up in a rented unit off Highway 40? The answer starts at a baby shower in February, the day my sister picked up a cake knife. Welcome back to Calm Drama Vault, where quiet people finally tell the stories their families hoped would stay buried. If you've ever been told to keep the peace while someone else kept the spotlight, this one is for you. Drop a comment below and subscribe. Before any of this, I was just a pediatric nurse in Overland Park, Kansas, working 36 a week at St. Agnes Medical, 7 years on the floor. I liked the night shift, the quiet hum of the monitors, the way a scared kid settles when you sit down instead of standing over them. Nurses learn one habit early, and it saves lives. We chart everything: time, dose, response, initials. If it isn't written down, it didn't happen. Remember that. It matters later. My husband Nate runs a 2-man electrical company. He's the kind of man who checks your breaker panel while he's over for dinner and won't take a dime for it. We met when he rewired the pediatric wing that June. He asked me out in the parking garage, sweating through his shirt, holding his clipboard like a shield. We bought a little gray ranch house on Larkspur Lane 4 years ago. Nothing fancy. We painted every room ourselves, and Nate built the porch swing from a kit that came with the wrong screws, which he still brings up. I tell you all this so you understand what I had, and what my sister decided I had stolen from her. I earned my life one shift at a time. Scholarship, student loans, double shifts, a second-hand car with a taped mirror until I was 27. Nobody handed me anything. That detail is going to matter too, because for 31 years my family told a different story about me. That things came easy for Renee. That Renee was the strong one. That Renee didn't need help. It sounds like a compliment. Hold it up to the light and it's a job assignment. And in my family, there was only ever one patient, and it was never me. Her name was Vanessa. She was 3 years older, and by the time I was 10, I already knew the rules of the house. The rules were simple. Whatever day it was Vanessa's day. My 10th birthday party got cancelled an hour before the guests arrived because Vanessa doubled over with a stomachache that had her screaming on the kitchen floor. Mom drove her to urgent care while my dad quietly called the other parents. The doctors found nothing. By 7 that evening, Vanessa was sitting cross-legged in front of the TV, eating my birthday cake, pain-free, and Mom smoothed my hair and said, "She needs us more than you do, Ren." I used to think that sentence was love. It took me 20 years to hear what it really was. It happened at my choir concert, my graduation, my wedding rehearsal, a fainting spell, a migraine, a crisis timed like a train schedule. Vanessa was never scolded and never wrong. She was sensitive. She was fragile. She was going through something. My mother, Carol, ran our family like a stage manager with one star. And the star could not stand anyone else near the lights. One more thing about Vanessa. And I need you to keep it in your pocket for later. She hated being touched. Always had. No hugs, no linked arms, no hand on the shoulder. Family joke was, you greeted Vanessa like a cat. You let her come to you. Even at her own wedding, she and Marcus did a stiff little sway at arm's length while everybody clapped. So no, nobody at that baby shower thought twice about the fact that not one guest had patted her belly in months. You didn't touch Vanessa. You admired her from a respectful distance, like a museum piece. Which is exactly how my mother raised her. I'm not telling you this so you'll hate a little girl with a stomachache. I'm telling you because 30 years of that raises a question nobody in my family ever dared to ask. What happens to the star when somebody else has news? We found out 5 years ago when my dad's heart quit in the driveway with a garden hose still running in his hand. He was 57. Roy Castillo was a quiet man who fixed things and asked for nothing. And I have spent a lot of my life trying to be him. At the funeral, Vanessa wailed so hard that 2 ushers helped her out of the pew. And the whole church watched her go. And my mother went with her. And that was the last anyone saw of either of them at my father's service. I stayed. I shook every hand in the receiving line by myself. I was 26. Afterward, Vanessa disappeared for 3 months. Grieving in her own way, Mom said, while I canceled Dad's subscriptions, filed the life insurance, sold his truck, and sat with my mother every Sunday while she cried into the good tablecloth. One of those Sundays, Mom took my hand across the table and said, "You're the strong one, Renee. I don't know what I'd do without you." I carried that sentence around like a medal for years before I understood it was a harness. The strong one doesn't get asked how she's doing. The strong one gets handed the paperwork. The strong one waits. And I want to be honest with you, because this part is on me. I liked being needed. After Dad died, holding my mother together became my second job, and I clocked in every week without fail. That's my flaw. It was never that I trusted I never trusted Vanessa an inch. It was that I believed my mother was mine to manage, mine to protect, mine to keep from breaking. It never once occurred to me to ask what my mother was doing with all that access to me. It should have, because one August evening, at that same table, under that same tablecloth, I handed her the one secret I couldn't afford to lose. Nate and I started trying for a baby the spring. I turned 29. Nothing happened. A year of nothing, then tests, then words like unexplained and diminished, which are doctor words for we don't know and we're sorry. We did 2 rounds of IUI. At $4,400 we pulled out of the porch remodel fund. Both failed. I'm a nurse. I know the numbers. Knowing the numbers does not help you in the shower at 2 in the morning, and it does not help you in the greeting card aisle in May. We kept it private. Completely private. For 2 years, except once. One evening in August, at my mother's kitchen table, she caught me crying over a diaper commercial, and I broke. I told her about the tests. The 2 failed rounds. The money. All of it. She held my hand and swore it would stay between us. I told exactly one person in this world. Hold on to that detail. Nate never even told his own brother. We weren't ashamed. We were protecting something soft, the way you'd shield a match from wind. By that August, I had gotten very good at smiling through it. So when September came and my phone lit up with a group text from my mother, all caps, a row of pink and blue hearts, "Family dinner Sunday, Vanessa has news." I put the phone face down on the counter, finished drying the dishes, and practiced my smile in the dark kitchen window. I already knew what the news was. It was always going to be her news. First, Vanessa announced her pregnancy, that Sunday in September, the way other people launch a product. She stood at the head of my mother's table, tapped a glass, and unveiled a framed sonogram like it was a lottery check. 12 weeks along, due at the end of March. And here's the truth, the whole truth. I was happy for her, genuinely. Whatever 30 years of birthdays had done to us, a baby is a baby. And I watched my sister glow and thought, maybe this softens her. Maybe this fixes something. My mother cried and started a group chat, that same night called Baby Watch. And for the next 2 months, Baby Watch was the only channel our family broadcast on. Vanessa quit her job at the boutique to focus on the pregnancy. Mom drove her to appointments, or said she did. Every craving got a photo. Every twinge got a paragraph. I hit the thumbs up on all of it from the break room at midnight, and I never once complained. The only person who didn't glow was Marcus. My brother-in-law is a big gentle guy who sells insurance and laughs at his own jokes before the punchline. And that fall, his laugh went missing. He'd sit at family dinner with dark circles under his eyes, cutting his food into smaller and smaller pieces, smiling half a second too late. When I asked him in October if he was sleeping, he said work was crazy. Insurance is never crazy in October. I noticed it the way you noticed a car parked wrong on your street. You clock it, you move on. I had my own life running underneath all this, and by late fall, mine had quietly caught fire in the best way. But keep your eye on Marcus. Out of everyone at that table, passing the rolls and toasting the future, he was the only one who wasn't acting. In late October, Baby Watch went quiet. Not silent, curated. The daily photos stopped, and in their place came short updates typed by my mother. Vanessa is resting. Doctor wants her taking it easy. Please respect her privacy. She's limiting visitors. Vanessa skipped Thanksgiving entirely. Mom delivered a plate to the duplex and reported back that she was doing beautifully, just tired. Something else changed that nobody named out loud. My sister, who had never been a hugger, stopped letting anyone within arm's reach at all. She came to one family lunch in early December, wrapped in a big cardigan, sat at the far end, and left before pie. I didn't connect it then. Why would I? I had a policy of not looking too closely at Vanessa, The way you don't stare into the sun. And besides, that same week, my own world tilted. I came off a night shift on a gray Tuesday in mid-December and, out of stubborn habit, took a pregnancy test from the box under the sink. The value pack of disappointment. Nate called it, because gallows humor is free. I set it on the edge of the tub and started brushing my teeth. Then I stopped brushing my teeth. 2 lines. After 2 years, to clean. Undeniable pink lines. I walked into the kitchen holding the stick like it was a baby bird. And Nate took one look and sat straight down on the floor next to the dishwasher. And we stayed down there on the cold tile, laughing and crying until his coffee went cold above us. We decided before we even stood up, we would tell no one until the first trimester was safely behind us. 2 years of heartbreak buys you that caution. No one meant no one. For a while, we even managed it. The ultrasound in mid-January is the best memory I own. The tech went quiet, tilted her head, and turned the screen toward us. 2 flickers, 2 heartbeats. Twins. Nate made a sound I have never heard from a grown man before or since. Something between a hiccup and a hallelujah. Girls, we'd learn later. 2 girls. I floated through my shifts for a week, and then I made the phone call I would give anything to take back. Understand my thinking, or at least my wiring. My mother was 60, widowed, and I had spent 5 years as her load-bearing wall. Vanessa's shower was 5 weeks out, and I knew, the way you know your own family's weather, that if Mom found out later that I'd hidden this from her for months, the fallout would land on me for a decade, so I called her on a Thursday night in late January. I told her about the twins. I told her the names we'd fallen in love with, Marlo and Isla, because she asked. And because saying them out loud to my mother felt like introducing her to her granddaughters. And then I said clearly, twice, Mom, this stays with you. Not a word to anyone until after Vanessa's shower. Her day comes first. I mean it. She went quiet for 3 seconds. 3 seconds is nothing. 3 seconds is also a very long time when you know someone's rhythms. And my mother's congratulations, when they came, arrived a half beat late. Like Marcus's smile. Of course, sweetheart, she said. Of course, that's Vanessa's day. I hung up feeling lighter. I had done the responsible thing. The considerate thing. The strong one thing. Somewhere across town. I now know. My mother sat with that phone in her lap in a dark kitchen, holding my secret in one hand and a much heavier one in the other. The shower was the 2nd Saturday of February at my mother's house. 28 guests. Pink and gold balloons. A 2-tier cake from the good bakery with a ribbon on the knife. And a banner over the fireplace that said welcome, baby. Vanessa held court in a white armchair like a queen at 34 weeks. Opening gifts in that big cream sweater she'd been living in, and I sat off to the side, keeping my own 14-week secret tucked under a loose blouse. With twins, you show early, and I was already careful how I stood. I fetched punch. I wrote down who gave what. Because of course, that job was mine. It was, by any measure, entirely her day, and I was fine with that. Then came the toast. My mother stood, raised her glass, got through 2 lovely sentences about miracles and new chapters, and then her eyes swept past Vanessa and landed on me. And I watched it happen in slow motion, the words leaving her before anything could stop them. And soon this family will have even more blessings, because Renee's carrying twins. The room did that thing where every conversation dies at once. 28 faces swung toward me. Somebody's aunt actually clapped twice before she read the temperature, and Vanessa rose from the white armchair without a word, walked to the cake table, and picked up the knife. She turned around holding it, and she pointed it at my stomach, at my hands, which had flown there on instinct. And she screamed, "This is my day." The scream didn't scare me half as much as what came after it. I put my palms out and said, "Van, put it down. Please calm down." And my sister leaned in and her voice dropped to almost nothing. And she said, "You stole my life and my babies." Babies. I remember the word snagging somewhere in the back of my mind. Even then, my Aunt Deb got an arm around Vanessa's shoulders and steered her backward. And the knife clattered onto the cake, ruining the bottom tier. And my mother stood frozen with her glass still raised while her church friends stared into their punch cups. I did not scream back. I kept my face still. I collected my coat and my husband. And we walked out of my mother's house through a silence you could have cut with that same knife. In the truck, Nate sat with his hands on the wheel, not starting the engine. "Renee," he said slowly, "did you hear what she said? Babies, plural. We haven't told a single soul there were 2. Neither of us said anything the whole way home. There was nothing safe to say. Let me pause here because I can feel some of you not believing me. A knife at a baby shower sounds unbelievable. I stood there and I barely believed it, but the knife was never the scary part. The scary part was finding out how long she had been sharpening it. You might expect that pointing a blade at your pregnant sister in front of 28 witnesses would earn a person some consequences. You do not know my family. My phone rang at 7 the next morning, and it was my mother, and I made the mistake of hoping. I thought she was calling to ask if I was okay. She was not. Your sister is in a fragile place right now, Mom said, in the same calm, managerial voice she'd used my whole life. That announcement was poorly timed. Renee, you have to see that. I reminded her that the announcement had been hers. A pause. Well, it was going to come out eventually. The point is, Vanessa feels blindsided, and I need you to not make this bigger than it is. Bigger than it is. A knife pointed at my abdomen at her party, and my assignment, mine was containment. I stood at my kitchen counter listening to my mother negotiate on behalf of the person who'd threatened her unborn grandchildren, and something in me went very still and very clear, like the moment a fever breaks. Mom, I said. She pointed a knife at my stomach. And my mother said, it was a cake knife. Renee, it was her day. There it was, the house rule, spoken plainly at last, over a phone line, to the strong one. I said I had to get ready for work. I didn't have work. I sat down at the kitchen table where Nate had left his coffee. And I did the thing 7 years of nursing had drilled into my hands when everything is going wrong at once. I took out a notebook, wrote the date at the top of the page, and started charting. Aunt Deb called that Wednesday. Deb is my mother's younger sister, a retired school bus driver with a lie detector where most people keep their manners. And she'd been the one to walk Vanessa off me at the shower. She got 2 sentences of small talk in and gave up. Renee, honey, I need to tell you something and I need you to sit down for it. That mess Saturday wasn't out of nowhere. According to Deb, since late January, weeks before the shower, Vanessa had been working the family phone tree, calling cousins, calling my mother's church friends, telling anyone who'd listen that I had been faking fertility problems for sympathy, and that the moment her pregnancy got the family's attention, I'd suddenly, conveniently, turned up pregnant myself, with twins no less, because Renee always has to win. She told me you'd been jealous of her your whole life, Deb said. She had it all organized, like a little speech. Honey, she was telling people about your twins before your mother ever raised that glass. I thanked Deb. I wrote it all down. Then I sat in my quiet kitchen and let the 2 impossible pieces knock against each other. My fertility struggles, told to one person once in August. My twins, told to one person once in late January. Vanessa had both, and she'd had them early enough to build a smear campaign out of them before the shower. The knife hadn't been a snap. It had been an opening night, which left a question I could barely stand to hold. There were only 2 people in that kitchen in August, and one of them was me. I looked at that sentence in my notebook for a long time. Then I wrote under it, in small letters, the most generous theory available. Mom let it slip. Moms let things slip. I underlined it twice, like underlining could make it true. The Facebook post went up 11 days after the shower. A photo of Vanessa, mascara artfully wrecked, one hand resting on the cream sweater, and 3 paragraphs I could recite for you today. She wrote that her baby shower had been hijacked and destroyed by a family member who could not stand to let her have one single day. She wrote that she had been verbally attacked while heavily pregnant and had to be protected by relatives. She never used my name. She didn't have 200 comments bloomed under it like mold. Prayer hands, broken hearts. Stay strong, Mama. My cousin Dana, who I taught to drive, commented a frowning face. By that weekend, 2 of my great-aunts had unfriended me, and a woman from my mother's church stopped me in the grocery store, looked at my rounding belly, and just shook her head slowly, like I was a car crash she was driving past. I want to tell you the truth about what that does to a person. Because the truth is embarrassing. At midnight, pregnant and furious, I sat on my couch and typed a reply. 4 paragraphs, the dates, the witnesses, the knife. My thumb was over the post button when my phone buzzed. The charge nurse asking me to cover Sunday, and I looked at my own words glowing in the dark living room. And I heard myself think, clear as a bell. If you post this, you're a contestant. The only prize in her game is attention, and the only way to win is to stop playing on her stage. I deleted the reply. I opened a folder on my laptop instead, labeled it with the date, and screenshotted everything. Her post, every comment, the unfriendings, all of it. Evidence doesn't shout. Evidence doesn't need likes. Vanessa was building an audience. Fine, I would build a record. March arrived, and with it, a strange season of small, deniable cruelties. A flower delivery to my door. White lilies, the funeral kind, with a card that said in loving memory and no name. A cash-on-delivery order of newborn diapers I never placed. The first of 6 deliveries, each one requiring me to stand on my porch and explain to a confused driver that I hadn't ordered anything. Then the calls started at the hospital. The unit secretary flagged me down one night. A woman had phoned twice, asking which shifts Nurse Castillo worked, claiming to be a family friend planning a surprise. We don't give that out, obviously. She'd hung up both times. I logged every incident in the notebook. Date, time, what, who witnessed. And somewhere in week 3, reading it back on my break, the pattern stood up and looked at me. The lilies arrived the day of my 16-week appointment. The first diaper stunt landed on the day of my blood work. The hospital calls came the same afternoon my OB's office called to reschedule my 20-week scan. Every strike landed on a day that meant something in my pregnancy. Days that existed nowhere except my own calendar and my own medical file. I sat in the break room with my notebook on my knees and a cold cup of coffee. And I wrote one sentence and boxed it in ink. It's like she has my calendar. Nate wanted to drive to the duplex and have it out. I talked him down, and I'll tell you exactly why. Confrontation was the invitation she was engraving. Every stunt was a doorbell she was ringing, waiting for me to answer, angry in public. On camera, so the story she'd built could come true. I would not answer, but I did start asking a colder question in the margins of my notes. Not why is she doing this, but how does she know? I got my answer to neither question on the last Friday of March. In the waiting room of Meadowbrook Women's Health, at my rescheduled 20-week scan, I checked in, sat down, reached for a magazine, and there she was. Vanessa, sitting across the waiting room in the cream sweater, hands folded on the swell of her belly, watching me with a small, patient smile, like she'd been holding my seat. My appointment time existed in 3 places on Earth: my phone, Nate's phone, and my chart. Small world, she said, loud enough for the room. I did not perform. Every pregnant woman in that waiting room was watching, and some animal instinct told me that an audience was the whole point. So I walked to the front desk instead, and quietly asked 3 questions. Nurse to receptionist: has anyone called about my appointments? Can you add a privacy flag to my chart? Can you check whether anyone but me has accessed my portal account? The receptionist typed, frowned, typed, no calls logged. Flags on now. And no one but me has ever logged into my portal. That night I changed every password I owned, anyway. Turned on every alert, and wrote the whole scene down while Nate read over my shoulder with his jaw working. Here is what I need you to understand. I did not shrug this off. I saw the red flag. I acted on it that same day, in every way a careful person could. The system itself looked me in the eye and told me I was secure. When they finally found the leak, months later, it turned out to be somewhere no password change could reach. A door I'd left open 5 years earlier and had every reason to believe was closed. We'll get there. Vanessa never had an appointment that day. The desk confirmed it. She'd just known where I'd be. The first week of April, Vanessa asked to meet, neutral ground, a coffee shop off 87th Street, just us girls, to clear the air. I went, against Nate's advice, for one reason. My notebook had a blank column labeled her side, and I am the kind of person who fills in columns. For 10 minutes, I saw a performance worth the price of admission. Tears at the right moments, a trembling hand on the belly. The hormones have me all turned around. Ren, you know I'd never actually hurt you. She dabbed her eyes with a napkin, and I watched her check over the rim whether the couple at the next table was watching. Then came the pivot, smooth as a key change. But you have to understand how it looked. Announcing twins at my shower. You've been second your whole life, and I get that this was your moment, but it was supposed to be my day. My day, always the same words, smooth as river stones. And then the ask, the real reason for the coffee and the tears. So I think for the family, you should post something on Facebook, just clearing up that it was a misunderstanding and you're sorry for how it unfolded. Mom agrees. It would mean so much to her. There it was, a public confession, drafted by the offender, co-signed by my mother, to be published under my name. I looked at my sister for a long moment and said, no, Van. I'm not going to do that, and I watched the tears shut off. Not fade, shut off, like a faucet. Mid-drop. What was left looking back at me was flat and cold and older than both of us. I stood, put money on the table for both drinks, and walked out. It was the tap I kept thinking about on the drive home. You can't fake plumbing like that. The crying was the mask. The dry eyes were my sister Vanessa's due date was the end of March. It came and went with no news. And I'll admit, the quiet felt strange, but April in a hospital eats your attention, and I let it. Then the second week of April, my mother summoned the family to a healing dinner, and before anyone lifted a fork, she stood, gripped the back of her chair, and announced through tears that Vanessa had lost the baby. Stillborn, she said, 36 weeks. It had happened privately, with dignity, and Vanessa needed love now, not questions. The table made the sound a family makes when the floor gives out. My great-aunt wept into her napkin. Dana ran to the bathroom, and I sat there with my hands over the twins and grieved for my sister. Honestly, physically grieved, because whatever she had pointed at me in February, I would not have wished this on her in 1,000 years. I reached for my phone to text Marcus, my heart, my help, anything. And that's when the details started refusing to line up. No hospital was ever named, and I know every delivery ward in 3 counties. No funeral, no marker, no date. Vanessa doesn't want a service. Marcus never answered my message or anyone's. I learned later he had gone to his brother's to grieve, like men do. A sentence that should be in a museum of things that mean the opposite of what they say. And no questions meant no questions. When Dana gently asked what the baby's name had been, my mother looked at her, just looked, and Dana apologized. I drove home that night with my grief slowly curdling into something I couldn't name and didn't want to. In my notebook I wrote the facts, then sat with the pen hovering, then added, no hospital, no name, no Marcus. I closed the notebook. Some doors you're not ready to open. Even when your own hand wrote the address, grief rearranged the family board, and every piece moved toward me. Overnight, the shower was forgotten, the knife was forgotten, and a new story settled over us like snow. Vanessa had lost everything, Renee had everything, and decent people balanced their accounts. My mother said it right out loud at Sunday dinner in May, spooning green beans onto my plate like a down payment. Your babies are all she has left now, Renee. Let her be part of this pregnancy. It would heal her. Within a week, the requests arrived, each one relayed through Mom, each one bigger than the last. Vanessa wants to come to the anatomy scan. Vanessa should be in the delivery room. She's a mother too, in her heart. Vanessa would love to be godmother. And then, on a Tuesday phone call, the one that made my ears ring, Vanessa has some beautiful thoughts on names. You have room for compromise there, honey. I knelt there, gathering them up, half smiling at the ancient ones, and stopped. Between a get well card and a church bulletin lay a folded piece of printer paper. And through the fold I could see the gray cone of an ultrasound image. I opened it. It was mine. My 20-week anatomy scan. The one from the last Friday of March. Meadowbrook's header across the top. My patient ID in the corner. Both babies mid-wiggle. A printout of a screen I had only ever seen inside my own portal account. And down the margin, next to each little gray profile, someone had written my daughter's names. Marlo Isla, in handwriting I had known since childhood. Looping and pretty. And unmistakably my sister's. Each name underlined twice. My daughter's names were underlined twice. In my sister's handwriting, on a printout I had never given anyone. I don't know how long I knelt there on the guest room carpet. Long enough to hear my mother humming to the radio in her kitchen, 1 floor of carpet and drywall away. Close enough to call out to. I had told those names to one person on this earth. The room was very quiet, and the 2 facts stood in it with me, holding hands. The leak came through my mother's house. And whatever was flowing through that pipe was ending up annotated, underlined, and filed in my sister's hand. I did not walk into the kitchen. I folded the printout into my purse with hands that had gone full nurse. Steady because they had to be. Finished boxing my father's shirts. Kissed my mother's cheek at the door, and drove home with the radio off. All 15 minutes, listening to my own pulse. Here's where I stopped being a daughter with hurt feelings and started being a professional with a problem. Monday morning, I took my notebook, my screenshot folder, and the folded sonogram to a family law attorney named Marguerite Doyle, Grey Bob, reading glasses on a chain, a handshake like a nutcracker, $2,200 retainer, worth every cent for what she said in the first 10 minutes. Stop trying to figure out why. Crazy is not your case. Pattern is your case. Document everything. Say nothing to anyone and let her keep talking. Then she tapped the sonogram. And this we don't confront this yet. If your mother is the channel is now an asset. A channel can be tested. So we tested it. That's Sunday at dinner.com as you please. I served my mother a lie with the pot roast. I told her, just her, door closed, voice low, girl to girl, that my doctors had made a decision. With twins, They wanted me delivering at Baptist Memorial across town, not St. Agnes, where I work. Every word false. My delivery was planned for St. Agnes, had always been planned for St. Agnes, and exactly 3 living souls knew that. Me, Nate, and Marguerite Doyle's legal pad. My mother received the false secret with a squeeze of my hand and a promise, God love her, that it would stay between us. A canary in a coal mine doesn't have to do anything, Marguerite explained. It just has to sing where only one tunnel can hear it. If Baptist Memorial ever came back to me, a comment, a call, a stunt, I'd have my proof of the whole pipeline, mother to sister. No password required. I drove home feeling something I hadn't felt since February, and it took me miles to name it. It wasn't safety, it was initiative. For 4 months, the game had been played on me. Starting Sunday, I was dealing. 2 weeks later, in the middle of June, my neighbor Pauline from across the street flagged me down at my mailbox. Pauline is 73, sleeps like a cat, and misses nothing on Larkspur Lane. Sweetheart, she said, does your sister visit at night? I felt my face do something careful. Pauline described it, around 2 in the morning, twice that week. A car parked down past the Hendersons, and a woman walking back up the sidewalk to stand at the side of our house. The north side, where the spare bedroom is. The room with the crib boxes visible through the window, and just standing there. The second night, Pauline swore. The woman raised a phone and took pictures of the window. Of the dark window of my daughter's Sunday room. The next morning, I found soft dents in the flower bed under that window, the tidy oval prints of a woman's flat shoes, and photographed them next to a tape measure, like I was working a scene, because by then I suppose I didn't call my mother. I didn't post about it. I called a company off a work friend's recommendation. And by Friday we had a doorbell camera, 2 motion floodlights, and a camera over the garage covering the north side. Nate walked the yard every night before bed that whole summer, coffee in hand. Casual as a man checking tomatoes. About as casual as a lighthouse. And still, the mail started going missing. Little things at first, things you'd blame on the postal service. A bank statement that never came. A birthday card from Deb with $20 she swore she'd sent. Then the clinic's appointment reminder cards. 2 months running. I filed a hold pickup at the post office and noted every gap in the notebook, which had become 2 notebooks. You can call all this paranoid. In July, you'd have been right to wonder. By November, a detective would be photographing that same rubber-banded mail on a folding table off Highway 40. The text came on a Thursday night in late June, from a number I hadn't seen light up my phone since April. Marcus, can we talk? Not on the phone. Please don't tell Van or your mom. Please. I stared at it for a long time. Nate read it over my shoulder and said, trap, which tells you where our family was by June. But I kept thinking about the man with the missing laugh. Cutting his food smaller and smaller all fall. The only person at that table who wasn't acting. Some people go quiet because they're guilty. Some go quiet because they're carrying something. I texted back a diner off. 435. Saturday, 10 a.m. He was there when I arrived early, which Marcus never is. Folded into the last booth with his back to the wall, 2 coffees already going cold. And a manila folder squared up on the table in front of him like a man about to confess to a crime that wasn't his. He looked thinner. When I slid into the booth, he tried to say hello and managed about half of it. Then he put his hand flat on the folder and said, Renee, before I open this, I need you to know I wanted to tell you in April. I wanted to tell everyone. I was outvoted. In a family, think about what that word means and who gets votes. I looked at the folder under his big freckled hand and I understood, with total clarity, that whatever was inside was going to break the story of my family in half. That there would forever be before this booth and after this booth. I reached for it anyway. Inside the folder was a hospital discharge summary. Dated the 20th of October, Overland Regional Emergency Department, 1 town over. Patient, Vanessa Reyes. And on the second line, in the flat language medicine uses when it can't afford feelings, the words that rewrote my entire year. Fetal demise, 17 weeks. October, 17 weeks. I did the math, the way you check a med dose twice, hoping to be wrong. The baby my family toasted in February had been gone since the 20th of October. The belly under that cream sweater was padding. The shower, the balloons, the 2-tier cake, the ribbon on the knife, had been a party for a child who no longer existed, thrown by the one other woman in that room who knew, because she knew. Marcus's voice came out sanded flat. It was Carol who met us at the ER that night. Carol who sat in the hallway while Vanessa was told, and in the parking lot at 2 in the morning. It was Carol who took her shattered daughter's face in her hands and made the plan. "We don't tell people yet. You'll announce when you're ready. Let Mom handle the family." Then the shower invitations went out in January, Marcus said. And I thought, she cancel it. She has to cancel it. And your mom kept saying, "Let her have this. It's part of her healing." He'd begged them both to get Vanessa to a doctor of the other kind. Carol's answer never changed. Therapy is for strangers. Family heals, family, and there was more. The reason he couldn't sit inside it anymore. It hadn't been the first. 4 other pregnancies over 6 years, all ended early, all hidden. A private ladder of grief my sister had been climbing alone while the family admired her from the required distance. Everyone at that shower was toasting a baby who had been gone since October. And the only 2 women who knew were holding the cake. I thought about the knife pointed at my stomach and the sentence under it. "You stole my life and my baby's." And it changed in my hands like a photograph developing. She hadn't been announcing hate. She'd been announcing a delusion. One my mother had catered, decorated, and mailed invitations for. Marcus's phone buzzed on the table between us. Van, flashing on the screen. He went gray and turned it face down, and neither of us breathed for a second. I want to be careful here, because this is the part where some of you will say, "She was sick, Renee, have mercy." And I did. I sat in my car outside that diner and cried for my sister for 17 weeks. For 5 hidden losses. For the girl raised as an exhibit who was never taught to be a person. Mercy was never the question. The question was what mercy is allowed to cost, and who my family had decided would pay it. Because pity does not make a person safe to be near. Sometimes it makes them less safe, and everyone who loved her had voted to leave her untreated and aim her at me. I got my answer about cost that same weekend. Sunday night, 1:40 in the morning. The floodlight tripped. The doorbell camera caught it clean. A figure at our back gate working the latch. The gate code, to which 4 people on earth knew. Because my mother kept our spare key and codes on a cup hook in her pantry, labeled, because of course she did. The latch scraped, the light hit, and the figure walked away fast down the fence line. Unhurried and wrong, hugging a canvas bag, chin tucked. You couldn't see the face. I didn't need the face. Monday morning, Marguerite watched that clip twice without blinking, then opened her calendar. "We're done collecting. Now we file." Ex parte order of protection granted by a Johnson County judge that Thursday, on the strength of 2 notebooks, 1 folder of screenshots, 1 flower card, 1 footprint photo, and 11 seconds of video. Temporary, Marguerite warned me. The real test was the final hearing, both sides present, evidence on the record. Set for September, then bumped. Then bumped again by the court's calendar, to November 12th. The system is slow. She was not. From that Thursday on, my life became a countdown with a date at the bottom of it. And so did this story. November 12th. Hold on to it. The sheriff served Vanessa on a Friday. My phone detonated by dinner time. My mother's opening line. "No, hello. A restraining order against your sister. Have you lost your mind?" I sat at my kitchen table, 8 months pregnant, and let her go. The fragility, the grief, the family handles family entire hymn. And while she preached, I did something new. I said almost nothing back, not out of fear. Strategy. Marguerite's voice in my head. Let them talk. Everything they say is inventory. What my mother did not know, monologuing about attention, was that a copy of an Overland Regional discharge summary was sitting in my lawyer's safe. She lectured me about Vanessa's healing without knowing I knew what there was to heal from. That every righteous sentence was self-incriminating testimony, delivered free of charge to the quietest audience of her life. I just said, "Okay, Mom. I have to go, Mom." And wrote it all down when she hung up. The family sorted itself, that weekend, like laundry. 2 great-aunts and cousin Dana went cold, but Aunt Deb called, and her voice had gravel in it. I was standing 3 feet away at that shower. "Honey, I know what I saw, and I know what I heard. And if a judge wants to hear it too, you give them my number." First witness, volunteering. And then she added, almost casually, the thing that told me the tide was turning under the family's feet. "And Renee, I've been thinking, nobody ever did see Vanessa's belly, did they? Not once. Just the sweater." Even the choir was starting to count. The order required Vanessa to stay 500 feet from me, my home, and my workplace, 11 days after she was served. I opened my front door at 6 a.m. to leave for a day shift and nearly stepped on a white box. No postage, no note, ribbon tied in a careful bow. Inside, folded in tissue like something precious, were 2 newborn bodysuits, soft yellow, and across each tiny chest, embroidered by hand in rose-colored thread, a name, Marlo on one, Isla on the other. Names we had told no one but my mother. Names that existed on a stolen printout in my sister's handwriting, now stitched, needle and floss. Hours of work under a good lamp, onto clothing for my children, left on my doorstep by a woman legally barred from standing on it. I want you to sit with the hours. Rage is fast. A Facebook post takes a minute. Even the knife took only a second of madness. Embroidery is slow. Embroidery is patient. Somewhere across town, my sister had spent whole quiet evenings pulling my daughter's names through fabric. Letter by letter, loop by loop, planning what a gift, a claim. I stood on my porch in the July morning light with the box in my hands, and for the first time since February, I was purely, physically afraid. Then I did what I had trained myself to do. Instead of feeling things at 6 in the morning, I photographed the box on the porch where it lay. I bagged it in a 2-gallon Ziploc from my own kitchen, evidence style, tissue and all. I called the non-emergency line, met the officer on my lunch break, and filed report number 1 for violation of an order of protection. The officer, a young guy with kind eyes, held up the bag and studied the stitching. "This is handmade," he said. "Somebody took real time with this." I said, "I know, that's why I called you." With a violation report filed and a hearing on the docket, Marguerite had the leverage she'd been building toward all spring. A subpoena for the portal system's access records, not the clinic's front desk view. The network's actual audit logs, the ones nobody at a reception desk can see. It took the health network's legal department 3 weeks to comply. On a Tuesday in late July, Marguerite called me into her office, laid a printout on the desk, and turned it around to face me the way you'd turn a verdict. "The receptionist told you the truth," she said. "No one but you ever accessed your account. She just wasn't looking at the right account." 5 years ago, after my appendectomy, I'd signed a form giving my mother proxy access to my patient portal. 1 signature, 1 recovery, 1 ride to a follow-up appointment, forgotten by March of that year. The clinic I'd used back then had since been folded into the same network as Meadowbrook Women's Health. The proxy came along with it, dormant, invisible in my settings, alive in theirs. Carol Castillo, authorized representative, 29 logins in 8 months. Marguerite had matched them against my notebooks, line by line. A login the morning of the funeral lilies. A login the day before the waiting room ambush, 20 minutes after Meadowbrook confirmed my rescheduled scan. A login the evening before the hospital started getting calls about Nurse Castillo's schedule. My mother hadn't let something slip at a kitchen table. My mother had been running surveillance on her pregnant daughter and delivering the take to the woman pointing the knife. 29 times, methodically, for months, and the canary. The canary sang that same week. A cousin's Facebook thread about hospital bills. And there was Vanessa commenting from her account, mocking certain people who think they're too good for St. Agnes and have to deliver at Baptist Memorial. Baptist Memorial, the false detail. The one I had spoken aloud to exactly one person, once, over pot roast, with the door closed. The pipeline complete and documented. My chart to my mother's eyes. My mother's mouth to Vanessa's hands. Vanessa's hands to my doorstep. Marguerite clicked her pen and said the only celebratory thing I ever heard her say. "We have both of them. Now we get you safely through this delivery, and we wait for November 12th. Neither my mother nor my sister had any idea what we were holding. They kept right on talking. Marlo and Isla Castillo were born on a Thursday at the end of July, at 37 weeks, by scheduled C-section at St. Agnes, where the plan had always been. Marlo came first, furious about it, 5 pounds 3 ounces of opinion. Isla followed a minute later at 4pounds12.com as a Sunday. And the room laughed because you could already tell whose temperament came from whom. When the nurses laid them on my chest, both at once, skin to skin, one tiny ear against each collarbone, Nate put his forehead against mine and cried for the first time in the 10 years I'd known him. Big, silent, shoulder-shaking tears. His hand covering both of their backs at the same time, like a tarp over seedlings. For one whole day, I forgot I had a sister. That is the honest truth, and I'm not sorry for it. Aunt Deb visited with 2 crocheted hats and didn't stay long, and cried in the doorway on her way out. My mother sent flowers to the front desk. I had them redirected to the children's ward without reading the card. Here's what nobody in my family knew about that delivery. I'd spent July preparing for it like a mission, because hospitals have security protocols for exactly my situation, and I'm a nurse. I knew every one of them by name. Our admission was flagged confidential. Call the switchboard and ask for Renee Castillo, and the answer was that no such patient existed, and our chart carried a security alert with a copy of the protective order attached. Friday morning, the day after the girls were born, the unit secretary picked up an outside call. A woman, warm as pie. So sorry to bother, she was the patient's sister. Family had planned for a delivery at Baptist Memorial and switched last minute. Could someone just confirm the room number? She wanted to send balloons. The secretary confirmed nothing, logged the call at 9:40 a.m., and reported it up because of the flag on my chart. Baptist Memorial, my canary, singing for the second time on a recorded line to a maternity desk. An hour later, hospital security escorted a woman out of the second-floor parking garage, standing between cars near the skywalk entrance, no visitor badge, and left without argument when approached. Description: mid-30s, sunglasses, oversized cardigan. It was 94 degrees that day. The knock came on a Tuesday in late October. The girls were 12 weeks old. I was 3 weeks back on day shifts, and the woman on my porch held up a laminated badge. Ms. Ferris, Children's Division, following up on a report. Someone had called the state hotline about my daughters, alleged that a night shift nurse was leaving newborn twins unattended, that the infants were failing to thrive and missing medical care, and that there were unsecured weapons in the home. Anonymous, of course. I walked Ms. Ferris through my home with the folder I keep on the girls. Every pediatric visit since birth. Case closed as unsubstantiated within 90 minutes. But at the door, she said, the report mentioned your night shifts and described this home's layout. Most anonymous reports don't come with a floor plan. The first week of November, Marguerite and I did the full walkthrough for the hearing, now 9 days out. Her conference table looked like a small, well-organized war. 59 logged incidents across 2 notebooks, 2 police reports, the embroidered bodysuits in their zip, the audit log with its 29 entries, the maternity desk, call log, the CPS closure letter, Aunt Deb confirmed and subpoenaed, and Marcus, who had called Marguerite himself in October and said he would testify to all of it. On the 8th of November, 6 days before the hearing, my phone rang at 4 in the afternoon with a number I didn't know, and a voice I'd never heard said, Mrs. Castillo, Detective Ruiz, Overland Park Police. It's about a storage unit off Highway 40. At 8:40 the next morning, we pulled into the gravel lot of Prairie Self-Storage, and Detective Ruiz was waiting by Unit 214 with the door already up. You already know what was in Unit 214, because I opened this story standing inside it. The crib assembled, the exact model from a registry I'd started online and never sent to a soul. The dresser drawers organized by size, taped to the inside of the top drawer, a printed schedule, my shift rotations, my OB appointment dates, the girls' 2-month checkup, highlighted, annotated, on the wall, photographs, our house at night, the north window, the crib boxes on the porch, and at the bottom, tucked in a folder like homework, a typewritten draft addressed to the Children's Division, alleging neglect, phrases I recognized from Ms. Ferris's tablet. The facility manager had been alerted by after-hours door alarms twice that week, and Tuesday night found a woman asleep inside the unit, in the rocking chair, wrapped in a baby blanket. Trespass after hours. Welfare check. Police. The officers ran the names painted on the wall, and Marlo and Isla Castillo came back attached to an active order of protection. One more thing, Ruiz said, and flipped her notepad. Units not rented to Vanessa Reyes. Lee says, Carol Castillo. My own mother. Behind me quietly, Nate said a word I won't repeat. Lee signed the 3rd of March, 2.5 weeks after the baby shower. $79 a month. 9 payments. Autopay and the card on file belonged to Carol Castillo. Judge Marion Blackwell presided over the hearing on November 12, and Marguerite laid out 59 incidents, the audit log, the embroidered bodysuits, the maternity desk call, the canary. My aunt testified to the knife. Marcus dismantled his own life on the stand, laying out the emergency room, the discharge summary, the plan in the parking lot, for earlier losses hidden over 6 years. Detective Ruiz put Unit 214 up on the courtroom screen, and I watched my sister at her table, lips moving, and finally made out the words, 17 weeks, 4 days, a rosary, not a defense. When her lawyer asked if she was aware the storage unit contents referenced her nieces, Vanessa rose from her chair, and 30 years of practiced fragility burned off in front of the county, like fog in the sun. They were supposed to be mine. She stole them. She pointed at me, no knife this time, just a shaking finger, and screamed the sentence she'd been rehearsing since February. This was my day. Judge Blackwell granted a full order of protection, 1 year renewable, no contact, 500 feet. and looked directly at my mother in the second row. This family did not arrive here despite your help. It arrived here by way of it. In the hallway, my mother stood alone by the courtroom doors, straightening her scarf, calling to retreating backs. I was keeping this family together. Nobody answered her. We drove home to our daughters. It's been 6 weeks. We put our house up for sale the Monday after court and moved 2 hours away. To a city I won't name, where a hospital had an opening on their pediatric floor that fit like it was tailored. Vanessa signed a plea agreement in December, conditioned on inpatient psychiatric treatment, named a delusional disorder, woven through complicated grief, 5 losses deep, untreated by design. Marcus filed for divorce and moved near his brother. The nursery in Unit 214 was donated to a women's shelter downtown. Every stick of it, except the back wall, which the manager painted over himself before we ever asked. My mother writes once a month. I don't read the letters. I don't burn them either. They go in a shoebox. Sealed, dated, charted like everything else. Here is the one thing I know now that I didn't know at that baby shower. Love without boundaries isn't love. It's a waiting room, and you will sit in it forever, holding your paperwork, until someone sicker than you needs your chair. That's my story. 1 cake knife, 29 logins, 2 names painted on a wall that never should have known them. If this reminded you to check who still has access to your life, your accounts, your records, your peace, do it today, not Sunday. And share this with someone who keeps the family peace at her own expense. Drop a comment, hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.